We are very happy today to have you. We have Martin Cooper, who just got the award of the Masari Ikuba IEEE 2015 Consumer Electronics Award, sponsored by the Sony Corporation. And as you all know, Martin Cooper is the person who headed the team that invented what we call today the mobile phone, caused a global revolution. So we are very glad you are here. And my name is Nahum Gershon from Consumer Electronics Society, and we have Stu Lipov also from Consumer Electronics Society. And my first question would be, how did you come up with that invention? Did you take a bath like Archimedes, or you hot tub in California, you live in California, or you just took a walk, a hike, and came up with the idea? How did it come to your mind, the idea to have a mobile phone from all things?
Nahum, you must know that necessity is the mother of invention.
Yes.
And the thing that motivated us to do this is, first of all, there was a realization that people are naturally, fundamentally mobile.
Yeah.
And we Motorola were in a battle with AT&T. AT&T invented the concept of cellular reuse and small cells, but they wanted to make cellular car telephones, and they wanted to have a monopoly. And we were opposed to both of those. We believed that the time was ready to have true personal communications. And we were very much opposed to monopolies, competition. And they were the biggest company in the world. We were a little company in Chicago. How do we get the attention of the world? And that's when I had the idea, why don't we do a dazzling demonstration? And I knew we had the technology because this dream of mobility, of people moving, is part of our culture at Motorola, personal communications. So I put a team together, and we built a phone in 3 months. We actually built not only the phone, but the infrastructure, the system that made the phone work. We took that to New York, and that's when we did a press conference and showed the world what cellular really should be.
And that's the instrument we have down here on the floor?
And this is exactly what the first phone looked like. It weighed a little over a kilo, had 20-minute battery life. As I mentioned before, that was not a problem because you couldn't hold this up for 20 minutes. It was too heavy.
Maybe I could follow up with a question too. Marty, looking at this phone, and at the time you developed it, obviously you had a vision. You knew from your career that all electronics get smaller, lighter, and better. I guess by the time before the smartphones got introduced and they were just mainly phones, this had shrunk to probably about 3.5 to 4 ounces, and battery life was 8 hours in a remarkably short period of time. Did you ever envision that things would happen that quickly, or was that a surprise to you?
Well, when you say happen quickly, first of all, let me correct what you just said. When we designed this first phone, what the industrial engineers came up with was a little phone this big. It was roughly that shape, but it was a little phone. And in fact, we had a contest. And we had our best industrial designers, none of whom worked for me. They were all billing other people. And they designed a slider phone, a flip phone, and all of these were small. Then we handed these small models to the engineers that had to make it work, and that's when this thing grew. But did we know that this would become ubiquitous? Of course we knew it would be, because we knew that this is the way people want to communicate. There is something very unnatural about the wire that hooks a wired phone to the wall, and yet the phone company for 100 years persuaded us that's the only way to communicate. But if you think about it, if Marconi had come before Alexander Graham Bell, there never would have been a wired network.
Right. Yeah, I'll just follow up. the serving that need of making this ubiquitous, obviously was part of your vision, your need, and absolutely were right. I guess I was just asking whether you were surprised by the speed by which this eventually got down to a small.
I did answer your question. When you say speed, you know that any time you've got something in the laboratory that just works, people think they happen instantaneously. Typically, it's 20 years from the laboratory to the first commercial. And when you do have a commercial device, it's another 20 years to when everybody's got one, when your neighbor has one. And that's how long it took for cellular. We implemented cellular commercially in 1983, and not until the mid-90s did it really start to explode. It took much longer than you think in retrospect.
Are you happy with the way cellular phones are today, that they could do texting, you can browse the internet, you can order tickets, have all those apps, and also you can use them for phone calls. Are you happy with the way mobile phones are in today?
The modern mobile phone, this thing that you're holding in your hand now, is suboptimal in every respect. If you try to build something that does all things for all people, it won't do any of them optimally, won't do any of them very well. So it's not a very good phone. It's very awkward, doesn't fit on your face well, and in many other respects, you're better off with a big screen. I think we are still in early days. I think we're still evolving, and ultimately, we will see a very different thing that we will call a cellular device. Crazy to call it a phone. And what I envision is, first of all, you will have a device that you carry somewhere in your body that is a server. Right. It connects you to the world. And connecting to that server are devices that you need for your purposes. So one of those devices might be an optimal phone. Well, what's an optimal phone? To me, an optimal phone is a device that's implanted under your skin, so you never have to charge the battery because you're using your body to charge it. It's got a very powerful computer to whom you can speak, and you tell this computer, get me Malcolm on the phone. And next thing you know, either I'm talking to you or your cousin in the Ukraine. So that would be an optimum phone. But then you would have other devices. You might have a health device, a fitness device, some whatever it is that is tailored to your needs, and the applications that will happen then, I think, are going to be very powerful applications. They will be things that will solve the healthcare problem, eliminate disease. They will improve our productivity, hopefully solve the poverty problem. And I think the most important, or at least the thing that everything leads from, is education. We are not going to have a productive culture until we have an educated culture.
I think it's a very powerful vision that you articulated of dealing with all these issues, and I am certain, as probably as certain as you are, that this will happen. But people do talk about challenges. They talk about the challenges just beginning to rear their heads of security, privacy, concerns like that. What's your belief in terms of how serious these are and the extent to which they're likely to be overcome?
Oh, you are right on the mark as to it turns out that the technology itself is inevitable. We are going to do it. We can predict it very accurately. There's a thing called Cooper's Law where I predict how spectrum capacity is going to grow, and there's Moore's Law that talks about the number of devices. So technology is very predictable. People are not, and the security problem and the legal problems that I think are what are the privacy problems are much more unpredictable and severe. Privacy, well, there is no privacy anymore. We are being watched, monitored, measured everywhere we go continuously. We now depend upon security. Are we going to keep this information private for us? And who does the information belong to? It's our information. Well, you try to get a hospital to tell you about your own information. It's almost impossible. So we have some really big barriers to overcome, and I think they are more difficult than the technology barriers.
Maybe. Just another question. Earlier today, I heard you address an issue regarding limited spectrum. And of course, as you're very much aware, this is a huge public policy issue where the government believes that they have to refarm all the existing spectrum, that we're running out of it at a rate. You expressed a very different view, which if I mischaracterize it, you'll let me know. But I would summarize it as the technology will conquer the problems. Software-defined radio, cognitive radio, license-free radio. Where is the disconnect between what you believe and where apparently our public policy people seem to be trying to acquire more spectrum, believe we're running out?
Well, let me say, first of all, this is not just my belief. The engineering community pretty much knows that the spectrum has, maybe they don't agree with me that it's infinite, but that there is lots and lots of room for improvement. Where's the disconnect? Well, who is it that's making the rules? It's lawyers. Lawyers and politicians are what our FCC is. They do their best. They are always working in the public interest, and they've done a pretty good job in the past. But when it comes to predicting the future, that's not what their skill is. And unfortunately, the rules are all being made based upon their understanding of today's technology, and I think that's a big mistake. And I sit on a couple of government advisory boards, and I keep trying to persuade these people that an important thing that we should be doing continuously is trying to predict what the technology is and make the rules consistent with what is going to happen. So the FCC refarming, that's a good thing, but they should never give spectrum, licensed spectrum. I mean, who's the spectrum belong to, Stu?
Us.
You bet. So when they license the spectrum for somebody to use, they ought to require that it be used in the most efficient way. And to me, that's one of the most important things that can be done now. At the moment, nobody's paying attention to me, but I keep plugging away at it.
Talking about spectrum, you are known to be the father of the law of spectral efficiency, or Cooper's law. Could you tell us a few words about the law? And also, has a prediction of the law proved itself, or maybe the rate that the law actually cites actually has increased over the years?
Yeah, well, first of all, let me finish what Stu started to talk about. My belief is that there has never been a shortage, never been a scarcity of spectrum. Well, that's a fact. Anytime we want to try some crazy service out, TV they always find some spectrum. So the prediction is that we're going to run out of spectrum, but we never have. And so the Cooper's law, which I call the law of spectral efficiency, is really an observation. It's not a law. And the observation is that if you start looking at the total capacity of the spectrum, how many bits of information can go through the spectrum in a useful way, starting with Marconi. You got one person transmitting with a extraordinarily inefficient way across so there could only be one person in the world transmitting. Start with that as your base point, and then look at how we have progressed over the years. And it turns out that from Marconi's time, around the turn of the century to 1950, there was 1 million times improvement in spectral efficiency. And from 1950 to 2000, there was another 1 million times. That's 1 trillion. And we've gone still another. And that is where we are today. If you measure the spectral efficiency using the most advanced techniques, we are 10 trillion times better than with Marconi. If you look at the things that can yet to be done, the things that Stuart was talking about, using more MIMO, a lot more, using cognitive radio so that you start sharing spectrum in a much more effective way, then it's clear that we could do another trillion times in the next 50 years. So I don't think there's a spectrum problem. There is a management of the spectrum problem.
Maybe just shifting in a different direction. And by the way, I very much appreciate what you just said and the hope that it goes. I know you've got a smartphone, and you I'm sure one of your favorite applications that you're using is a phone and probably doing some email. But let me drill down one level further. Besides email and using the phone, what do you find is your favorite, or at least most important application to you that you use on the phone, besides a conversation and email?
Well, it depends how you define important, because you should know, Stu, that I do everything. I tweet, I do Facebook. I'm not sure that I see the functionality of any of those things, but I really want to stay connected. Otherwise, how could I ever talk to people like Sabina? And if I am not aware. But if you want to talk about really useful things, well, when I travel a lot, and when I go to the airport, I do use a what do you call these softwares that
the flight tracker.
Yeah, flight tracking. So I do that. I do check my email occasionally. That is probably the least useful thing that I do. But I do what most of the people in the world do. I talk and text. And I don't know anybody that really needs most of the functions that are used on cell phones today.
What do you wish worked better?
Everything. Well, that's I'm back to first of all, the most powerful thing is going to be collaboration, and so these tools that we're just flirting with now, all of them, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. What's the latest picture one? Instagram. All of those are going to evolve into real communications tools.
Yeah.
And that evolution is going to be super important, and I have no idea how it's going to happen. I know it will happen, and I know it's going to solve some of the big problems of the world. But we're in the what I call the Pong stage. Do you remember Pong?
I do. Yes,
It was a mindless game, right? You had these paddles going up and down, and people spent hours. And what was the unique? It was the first time that you were interacting with a screen. Mm-hmm. And pretty soon people got bored, so they did the next generation, Pac-Man.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, we are using a mouse and a keyboard and interacting with the screen. So we're still back in those old days when it comes to this new stuff. The thing that excites me now, well, the most important thing that excites me is the real applications of cellular. And so don't talk to me about flight tracking and all these and Twitter. Tell me about this lady in India who gets a micro loan and gets a cell phone, and the local farmer rents the cell phone for her to make a phone call. He calls the neighboring villages, find out where he can get the best price for his food. Win, win, win. The lady wins, the farmer runs, the neighboring villages get fresher food.
And the whole world gets better.
And the world gets better.
It's all wonderful. We're all very happy that we have a cell phone, doing all those wonderful things, connecting with everybody. But also some drawbacks. For example, you see pictures of a couple, eating breakfast. Each one of them, they don't talk to each other. Each one of them has a cell phone and they check their email or text to friends. So do you see any negative impact for your invention on the world? What do you think?
Of course, there's always negatives. You didn't bring up the subject of rudeness, but it's a form of rudeness, right?
That's a form of rudeness.
But I don't think it takes a cell phone to make people rude. But I think we are still learning. And the example I give is, you're not old enough yet, but at the beginning of cellular, We used to you go to a movie, phones ringing. Go to the opera, that doesn't happen anymore. So we have learned how to accommodate that. So are there problems? Yeah. Well, I have a problem with my wife, who I hope doesn't watch this video.
We are not going to send her. We are going to send you.
Yeah. Well, my wife has latched on to listening to books.
Yeah.
She would prefer to hear a book than to read. Well, I think that's great, but she shouldn't be listening to books while I want to talk. But she does. So we'll work that out.
Yeah. Send her to me. I'll teach her a lesson.
Okay, I remember that.
So this is a really interesting intersection of technology, society, politics, business, this sort of stuff. But we are the IEEE Technology Society, so I'll just turn back to that for a second. I think you mentioned technologies are going to conquer the spectrum problem, and I'm certain you're right. But one of the apparently unsolved problems are, as we're consuming more and more rich media that draw huge amounts of energy, the batteries are not living up to that particular problem. Given all that you know and your vision moving forward, do you see an answer to that problem, or do you see that really being a fundamental limitation?
Well, actually, batteries have made enormous progress. I mean, the battery in my cell phone is about 4 ampere hours. And when I started at Motorola, 4 ampere hour battery was nickel cadmium, just been invented, and it was a box about this big. The problem is not the battery, the problem is the charging. You have to remember to charge. And when you remember to charge, if it's a day or a week, it's not important. It's the remembering that's bad, because that's bad technology. Good technology is when you don't have to think about it. So what's the solution? Well, this is going to be a commercial. So I just discovered a technology that will allow somebody to put a box in this room that will radiate energy into my cell phone, into that camera, charge all the batteries with reasonable efficiency. And how does that work? Smart antennas. Would you believe that this device will have perhaps 100 RF antennas and will focus the energy right into that camera and into my cell phone and your cell phone all at the same time? And wherever you go, as long as there's one of these boxes, your phone will be charged. To me, that's the solution, not making you do something different.
Would it charge also my brain or just damage it?
I knew that some smart aleck would come up with that.
I'm a healthcare guy, among other things.
It turns out that the amount of energy that is spread around the room is so diverse that because we've got 100 antennas, and most of the energy is canceled out. The only place where there is energy is where the intelligence of this antenna, because it's smart, tells the signal they should get together. So the amount of energy is much less than you get when you hold a cell phone up to your ear. But it was a good question.
Thank you. Maybe we'll sum up. What's your vision for the future? I know it's a hard question, it's a loaded question, but how do you see, I mean, today we talked earlier that when you invented this, you could not have envisioned what actually would evolve from the device. The internet was not there, and digital cameras were not invented yet, and so on and so forth. So maybe they were invented around that time. So how do you view, let's say, the future in 10 years terms? We invite you here in a few years. What do you think will happen?
Well, the biggest problem that we engineers have, I think I mentioned this in my talk today, is technology for the sake of technology. So when we talk about long-range future, the only thing that has any meaning is people. How are people's lives going to be improved? So, yes, I love to talk about the gadgets and all the other things. What I really want to talk about is a world where there is enough productivity that there are no have-nots, because I think when that happens, that we will also eliminate war and a lot of the other conflicts, and it'll be a much better place. So that's what I'm looking for. Not technology, but a peaceful, productive world with a lot smarter people. Because I think I mentioned when we do the educational process right, we are going to end up with a more intelligent next generation, which means that we are the dummies and our children are smarter. And the only satisfaction we have is that their children will be smarter than they will be.
Thank you very much, Marty. I'm very humbled and actually touched by your humanistic approach, which is not so usual among techies, as you said. So thank you very much for coming here. We enjoyed it, and we learned a lot, and looking forward to meeting you here in this environment soon, and with good news.
And I learned a lot
Thank
as
you.
well. Thank you. Thank you, Nahum. Thank you, Stuart.
And thank you, Stu.